Today, in part 3 of the Pinwheel lap quilt, we will be doing more ironing, more sewing, and preparing to make the quilt pattern on the quilt. Welcome to Curiosity Kitten, where I make videos attempting to demystify making. Arts, crafts, baking, and making in general. I do this by showing projects, including the setbacks, mistakes, and experimentation. Making things is not a perfect process. Errors will be made, but learning from the mistake and finding a solution is part of the fun. So now we're going to take the seam and we're going to peel apart the two pieces on this middle part and iron those flat so that they're not interfering or doing weird things underneath the quilt. Especially for people with sensory issues, feeling a bump inside would irritate them, and so then they wouldn't want to use it. Because I'm making this, it would bother me if I had a crease or something inside. So I am going to be careful with getting that ironed smooth, and then we'll come back and put the two pieces or the four pieces together. After you've pulled and flattened and ironed, it will look like this. Again, I said when starting out, it's not going to be perfect. I'm sure there are people who get them so that all of the, like both sides would be even lengths and all that sort of thing, but in the end it's going to be hidden. So if you're just making this for yourself or a kid or something, it doesn't matter. And so I'm going to repeat this process of flattening the inner seam, and then we'll sew the 4 quadrants and repeat this process on the 4 pieces that we sew together next. Now I'm working on getting the next couple of pieces aligned. So I already pinned these along this side so that when it comes out, it's going to look like half of the pinwheel. So this could be the top portion. So we'll set that aside, and then we are working on the next piece. So I did literally like lay it out to make sure it looked right so that I didn't sew pieces the wrong direction. And what I'm doing is folding it back so that I can make sure that the angles align on the 2 different parts, so that when I pin the pieces together, they will be aligned. Like I said, they probably won't be perfect, and especially if that's not your goal. It is possible to get it perfect, but I want to demystify crafting and let you know when it doesn't need to be perfect. A lot of these things are going to be hidden. Obviously you want your stitch to be as straight as possible so that the end piece looks pretty and not wonky, but if it comes out wonky, it's your first time. I've never made a quilt before, but I wanted to try it and I wanted to see what it would look like when it was done. So don't ever be afraid to try things. People don't need to know if it didn't work out and you had to throw the whole thing away, or scrap it and use the fabric for something else. Nobody needs to know that, but at least try it. So we have these, again, I'm putting my pins closed up over on the side. These 2 pieces are put together, pinned together. So I'm going to get the sewing machine back up here and put these together, and then we'll sew all what's left over will be 2 pieces, so we'll sew those together, and then we'll be able to kind of we'll iron these seams and then put the whole quilt together, and then we'll see how it goes. Okay, so here is where all of our points come together. So there's a lot of fabric, and I still want to make sure that everything stays aligned, so I'm going to go very slow and hold everything together while I pull the pins out and go over it with the presser foot. I'm gonna pull this pin out. I'm holding everything so tight. Don't move. It's done. the edge? No one knows. Okay, close our pins. And let's see. Dun, da, da, da. Oh my God, it looks amazing. Let me get a picture. Oh, it looks so pretty. Yeah, you can see how cheap the fabric is. If you can see the weave and it's open, it's cheap fabric. But I got my points aligned and I'm so super excited. I'm gonna cut off some of these excess threads. Make sure there aren't any threads hanging out in the front. Nope. We move the sewing machine and then we'll iron that last seam that we just sewed, and then we are ready to put everything together. That's that. So that's everything is done there. I have this plain fabric that I'm going to use for the back of a lot of it. So I think I'm going to cut this so that we have all the pieces ready to layer, and then we'll layer everything. So let me throw this aside. That did not go right. Hold on. And we'll get our Fiskars cutter back up here. And find an edge of this somewhere. So our whole thing is approximately 34 by 34. So that's what we're going to cut this for. But my Fiskars is not 34 inches, so we're going to fold it in half twice and just do 17 by 17. And then when we unfold it, it'll be 34 by 34. Because math. I have no idea why I have so much of this fabric. It's kind of thin too, so I think I might double it up and then do the folding in half 2 times. So these are 17, it's almost 18 inches, but that's fine. And then I want to keep this part aligned. Let's just throw a pin in it. 17-ish inches. I'm gonna hold it at 18. Fold it over again. I literally have no idea why I have so much of this fabric. Okay. And I'm going to pin this as well. It does get a little confusing when there's so much fabric floating around. And then we don't need to use the Fiskars. Just because it's really odd and confusing the way it's lining up. So we're just gonna hack off. Yes, that's the professional term for it. Hack off this excess fabric. And then we'll see what we're dealing with and can better cut it. Honestly, since we're gonna layer it with everything else, we can just, when we get everything put together, we can take off the excess before we sew it all together. So now all this excess fabric is hacked off, and now we can just throw it aside and deal with that later. I'll take out the pins. Our final thing, we want doubled up. So we're gonna have this square, which is 2-ply, like toilet paper, of the fabric. And we are actually going to iron it flat across both layers. I feel like the underlying layer creases are affecting the top layer. So I am gonna switch to just ironing one layer at a time. Okay, so let's see if we can tell good side from the bad side on this. I think this is the good side, so we're gonna put this as the bottom. We're layering now. This is the next. piece. Get these somewhat aligned. So now we're going to layer everything together. So we have our back sheets, 2 of them because we doubled it up, and then the batting on the inside. And I read that this is called a quilt sandwich. Makes sense. So we'll smooth this out. My table wasn't wide enough, so I had to get this, I don't even know what it's called, folding thing with measurements on it. And then here is our quilt topper. Okay, so we'll get this all smoothed out. Well, I have little clippy things to help keep it all together, but I have no idea what I did with them. So we're just going to cut some of the excess off just so I don't have a lot of confusing stuff hanging around the outside. Smoothed this out. What's she doing? You're cute. Oh, what's going on? You're so sweet. Get up. Good boy. Get down. Sit. Good job. Okay, so we are going to kind of pin randomly in places to keep everything aligned so that when we sew our quilt pattern or quilt stitch into the quilt, everything will stay in place. A yardstick, measuring stick, just to make sure that I have everything aligned. So I'm using the 34-inch mark on the backing thing, the board that it's on, and want to make sure that this seam is lined up so that I know I'm working with a square thing. And I want to do, let's see, our final piece is just over 32 inches. Well, not final, but the put together version. So we started out wanting it to be 34-ish, like wanting to cut everything to 34 inches, knowing that it would end up being smaller. So now we can see that we've lost about 1.5 inches just with the seams and all that stuff. So I'm going to use a herringbone pattern for the quilting. That will look like this. Actually, I don't know if it's called herringbone. I think it looks like chevron because they're all aligned, where I feel like herringbone crosses over itself. What are you doing? What's going on, Bubba? You're so stinking cute. Go sit down. Sit. Good job. Thank you. Okay, so we have approximately 32 inches that we're dealing with. So I was thinking 4-inch strips. Yeah, I'm gonna do 4 inches. Again, I'm gonna line up the lines. Yes. Making sure to not get the fabric all scrunched up. It's a technical term for it, scrunched. Okay, now I'm going to move the stuff out of the way, move the board, get the sewing machine back up here, and we will sew these lines. If you liked this video, please hit the thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos in the future, please hit the subscribe button. And if you'd like announcements of when a new video is available, ring the little bell. Your support is greatly appreciated, and I hope to see you next time on Curiosity Kitten, where I demystify making.